Nairobi. Welcome to the last of 2 editions of the Presidential Debate 2017. My name is Linus Kaikai of NTV.
And my name is Joe Ageo of KTN News. This debate has been organized by Debates Media Limited, a broad partnership of mainstream media houses comprising television, radio, newspapers, and online platforms.
The format, rules, and guidelines of this debate have been developed by the Debates Media Limited in keeping with the best international practice and have also been aligned with the context of Kenya and Kenyans.
Now, these rules have been shared with all the 8 presidential campaign teams, and the rules prescribe that only presidential candidates duly nominated by their parties and cleared by the IEBC can take part in tonight's debate.
And as your moderators tonight, we shall be guiding discussions between the presidential candidates on selected topics that have also, as per regulations, been shared with the respective campaign teams. The questions are, however, our own and have not been shared with anyone.
Now, this debate is taking place in front of a selected audience that includes ordinary Kenyan voters. The audience will quietly follow the debate, no jeering or cheering, no clapping or any form of applause, except from a moment from now, as we welcome the candidates on stage.
As prescribed by the format, the candidates for the debate must have attained 5% and above of the popularity ratings in any recognized recent opinion polls. And the only candidates placed by Ipsos and Infotrack above this threshold are President Uhuru Kenyatta of the Jubilee Party and Honorable Raila Odinga of the NASA coalition.
Now, both candidates have been duly invited for the debate, but at this hour, we only have present here NASA coalition's candidate, Honorable Raila Odinga, whom we now welcome on stage.
Let us now put our hands together for Honorable Raila Odinga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Raila Odinga. Now, as we mentioned, we had duly invited the President, who is also the Jubilee presidential candidate for this year, and the half-hour wait was to try and give him ample time to get here if he was on his way. But as it is now, we shall begin the debate, and we'll start with my colleague Linus Kaikai.
Thank you, Honorable Raila Odinga, for turning up for the debate. You need no introduction, so we are going straight to the issues of this debate. Yesterday, opinion pollsters, specifically Ipsos and Infotrack, released their findings. And one of the findings down there was that a majority of Kenyans, according to Ipsos, 61% of Kenyans feel the country is headed in the wrong direction. Only 27%, according to Ipsos, of Kenyans think the country is headed in the right direction. Where do you belong, Mr. Odinga, 61% or 27%?
Joe, thank you very much. Allow me first to greet Kenyans. I know that very many Kenyans wanatazama mjadala wa siku huu kwenye runinga. Nataka kuchukua fursa kuwasalimu na vile vile kuambia ya kwamba tumekuja hapa kama Wakenya kujadiliana juu ya shida ambayo imekumba Wakenya wote kwa jumla, na sio tu kuja kwa mambo ya upinzani, lakini kutafuta suluhu kwa yale shida ambayo inakumba sisi kama Wakenya yote. Karibuni na asanteni sana. Having said that, let me now come back to the opinion poll, Ipsos and Sinovate. Joe, don't just believe that it is the polls that we should be talking about. You're talking about the Kenyans themselves, how they feel. And I have traveled around this country over the last 1 month in the campaign, and Kenyans are hurting. Majority of Kenyans are hurting seriously. The cost of living has gone up very seriously. From the last time, from 2013 up to now where we are, the inflation rate has gone up by 40% cumulatively. That is the cost of living 40%. But the average wage has only increased by 12%. And this is being felt by the people. Wherever you go, you are told about hunger. Hunger, and that's why we called it the hunger revolution. You know that the price of the maize meal was 110. It is now 150, 180, sometimes 200. The price of sugar is nearly 200 per 2 kilograms. The price of milk, which used to be 36 shillings, is now 60 shillings. But they buy it from farmers at 35 shillings. So generally, the Kenyans are justified in feeling that the country is heading in the wrong direction. And the issue is unemployment, and that issue is corruption, which is actually hurting our economy. The runaway corruption, what you call mega corruption, the Jubilee government. This really is, in my view, the cause of dissatisfaction by the people of Kenya.
And Honorable Odinga, you're running for president for the 4th time, if I'm not wrong. And for the 4th time, you're running for the presidency of this country against the backdrop of very sad statistics, if Ipsos and Infotrack findings are to be believed, especially about the cost of living, corruption, and unemployment. What is your answers to these things, and why do you see yourself as the answer to these questions?
Yes, Joe, this is my 4th time running, correct? And as you know, that I lost once in those other previous 3 elections. But I am running here because of my commitment to change this country. I represent change. The coalition that has chosen me as their candidate, the National Super Alliance Coalition, is a coalition that wants to bring change to our country. We think that we have a solution to the problems. For example, I mentioned the issue of mismanagement of our economy. That's the reason why we have got runaway inflation in the country. This government has borrowed, and they've borrowed very expensively. They've run away from the concessional loans and have gone for commercial loans with actually no maturity rate. And then borrowed and not invested properly. So that most of that money has not been invested in what you can say job creating opportunities in the country. That's why the unemployment right now stands at 40%. We have nearly 12 million youths who are on the streets looking for jobs. We believe that we can find a solution to that problem. We believe also that we can deal with the issues of inclusivity in our society from the ethnic point of view, from the gender point of view. We also believe that we can be able to turn things around economically, can create fiscal discipline so that we can be able to raise sufficient revenue and invest that revenue also properly. At the moment, every shilling that is spent, another shilling is stolen and in the private pockets of the people. We are going to deal with the issue of corruption also as a coalition.
Mr. Odinga, I would like to hear more specifics on your plans, and starting with the question of the cost of living. Some of the proposals you have put there have been dismissed as unrealistic in a free market economy like Kenya. You've spoken of reducing rent. You've spoken of reducing the cost of housing. How do you plan to do that? And again, in a free market economy like Kenya?
Yes, it is a free market economy. But they have said that the other coalition, or you may call it those who are in government, are pro-business, and we have been described as being pro-market. The difference is basically that those people are more focused on just one small portion of our economy. Because what we call the formal sector in our economy only employs 2.5 million people, whereas the informal sector employs 13 million people. We are going to focus our attention to where most people live and work, but at the same time not neglecting the other sector as well. But most importantly, you've asked a specific question about issues like rents and so on. Our country is fast urbanizing. The rural-urban migration is increasing by the day, or by the month, and by the year. We are going to reach a stage where nearly 60–70% of our population are going to be living in urban areas. But this issue of low-cost housing has not been sufficiently addressed. And that is the reason why we have the problems we're having today. You see, at independence, when urbanization started, the regime at that time came up with a policy of go back to the land, telling people to go back to the land. And even they coined a song saying, Mzee Kasema.
Sorry for interrupting you, Honorable Odinga. I've listened to you very carefully, and I'm sure tenants out there are listening to you very carefully. The question again, how do you plan to reduce the cost of rent as you have promised in your campaigns?
Joe, there is a law here which is called Rent Restrictions Act. That act is meant to deal with the low-cost housing where the poor people live, like in the informal shelters, like you have them in Kibera, in Madare, in Kwanjenga, and so on and so forth. This law has been meant to protect the poor from overexploitation of the landlords, of the structure owners. It has not been properly enforced. So that you find the landlords are increasing rents by the day, and if you default in payment within 1 week, you find your door removed, the roof has been removed by the landlord, you find your wife and children sitting outside the cold. We are going to enforce the Rent Restriction Act to protect the poor, to ensure that they're not forced to pay rent which they cannot afford, so that they live in squalor.
Landlords, you are, Honorable Odinga, landlords are voters, and they are listening to you right now. How do you think they feel about what you're saying?
It is a conversation I have had for a long time with the landlords. In fact, they are not landlords. In the slums, they are called the structure owners, because the land does not belong to them. The term landlord means that you have got a land over which you are lording. Now, these are basically structure owners who are given a temporary occupation license by the government, TOL, to put up a structure so that they can be able to rent it out. But the land belongs to the government. And they are listening to me. I'm not saying that they should not be allowed to also make business. But what you call live and let live. Let them make the money, but let also the poor not be so much exploited so that they are not able to put bread on the table.
Right, we're discussing leadership and integrity as our first topic tonight, and we've brought the issue of the direction of the country. I now want to take you to the regional side of things. And how do you think Kenya's standing around the region and Africa has been in the past few years, considering that just not long ago, the coalition of the willing that had gotten together to do the Northern Corridor projects, that's Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda. Rwanda has changed its mind. They don't want the project anymore, and they prefer to construct it through Tanzania. How do we stand regionally, in your opinion?
I think, Joe, the idea of a federation of East Africa was at the heart of the founding fathers of this region. that was informed the formation of the first community. It died, but not because of lack of commitment, but because of greed by some leaders. I do believe that this region will benefit more if you can remove some barriers which still exist and open the borders for free flow of goods and people. It can be done if there is political will to do so. I mean, the Northern Corridor is just one of the corridors. If you really want to integrate this region, you don't have to just have Northern Corridor. You need the Central Corridor, you need the Southern Corridor as well, and then integrate them.
But the question is, Kenya has been abandoned in the Northern Corridors project by both Uganda and Rwanda. What does that say about Kenya?
It speaks volumes about the leadership of Kenya. I think it is the leadership that is isolating itself. And that's the reason why Uganda is finding it more attractive to go to Tanzania. Tanga or Dar es Salaam is much farther away from Kampala than Nairobi and Mombasa. It does not make any sense economically, other than that it was a political decision. So I think that we need to do some soul-searching and thinking. I think it is the leadership that has let Kenya down.
4 Kenyans are currently languishing in jail in South Sudan. They were arrested and jailed for life for allegedly trying to defraud the Southern Sudanese government of some 200 million US dollars. Are you aware of this case? And if you were president, what would you do about that case?
I am aware that some Kenyans were arrested in Southern Sudan for suspected crime. I discussed this matter with the leadership of South Sudan. At that time, my appeal was to ensure that justice was done, that proper investigations were carried out, and that they were given fair trial before conviction. I do not believe that that has been the case as of now. We would really plead that those Kenyans are given a fair trial by international standards, so that those who are found to be culpable or guilty then face the law. In my view, that would be my plea to the government of South Sudan. And I do feel that the Kenya government has got sufficient political leverage to ensure that this is done to those Kenyans.
I think the relatives of these 4 Kenyans would want to hear specifics on what you would do if you won the election on the 8th of August. Would you move to have them freed? Because the trial, unfair as it was, if you're describing it as such, is already over and they've been jailed for life.
Yes, what I'm saying actually amounts to appealing on their behalf. Because I'm saying that I'm not convinced that they have had a fair trial. Maybe by Southern Sudanese standard, but I say by international standards. I do not think that that was a fair trial. And therefore I would ask the government to ensure that they get fair trial.
I want to stick still to the regional issues and bring up the very interesting issue about a tallying center in Tanzania. Is that true?
Are you through or you are still
through.
I thought you were continuing the question.
No, you had the question, Honorable Odinga.
No, Joe, you know, certain things exist in people's imagination. They have accused Tanzania government of hosting a tallying center for us. Why do we even need to have a tallying center in Tanzania? We are going through an electoral process. And the law does not prohibit anybody from tallying the results. The Constitution is very clear, and even the ruling of the courts are now very clear, that the results as announced by the presiding officer at the polling station cannot be altered by a returning officer at the constituency level. Tallying. Then the tallying results at the constituency level announced by the returning officer are also final, and they cannot be altered by the commission sitting here in Nairobi. That is the law as it stands right now.
And Honorable Odinga will come to those details when we discuss.
But I'm going to the credibility of the tallying center.
Yes, tallying center. Please address yourself to the question of tallying center.
We have made it very clear that we are going to be tallying so that we can be able to compare our results with those of the IBC. So why should somebody be worried about a tallying center, even if it is in Germany, even if it is in the United States, or if it is in the moon? Why should that be an issue? Why should that be a security issue? Because we're just adding up results and storing it. We're not just storing it unless somebody intends to rig. Why should that be a matter of national importance to the security intelligence of this country?
So do you or not have a tallying center in Tanzania?
We have a tallying center.
In Tanzania?
In Kenya, and in Kenya, and in the clouds.
Well, Honorable Odinga, let's come to the issue of elections. And you've been accused by your opponents of crying wolf. Every election, you've run for the 4th time now, and almost every election, you always raise questions about the credibility of that election way before it is held. You have, for example, made very serious allegations this year that the election is about to be rigged using, among others, the military. Is that something you would repeat? Is that a statement you would repeat in this debate?
Joe, I've not been crying wolf. Kenyans know the truth. You know what happens in 2007? That when we were leading by over 1 million votes, and the total number of votes which were left could not even close that gap, they shut the media, stopped the media from live transmission, and then went on to rig the results. Everybody knows that. Even Mr. Kriegler came and has his report. Even Mr. Kivit himself, when he was asked, he said he did not know who won the elections. That's the chairman of the Election Commission. Last time, the results are also now out. That 12 million people voted for the president, but only the 10 million people voted in the other 5 elections. Meaning that there were 2 million Kenyans who went to the booth and only voted for the president, did not vote for anybody else. Nobody can believe that. So now, you have said that they are at it again, because they have sensed defeat. The figures are not adding up. And that's the reason why they are involved in the security forces. And I've said that the Kenyan military has such a reputation internationally. And we have respect for the Kenyan military. I used to co-chair the Security Council. And I've said that they should desist the temptation to be engaged or involved in manipulating of the electoral results. The National Intelligence Service in this country must desist from interfering with the electoral process. Until and unless that happens, we'll always be having problems here. They are the ones who are now involved in recruiting returning officers, recruiting presiding officers, recruiting clerks, police officers, and we even showed correspondence showing that serving police officers have been asked to surrender their forces' ID cards to be engaged in so-called special duties. What are those special duties? You need to know that I was a prime minister. I used to co-chair the National Security Council. I have information. When I'm talking from authority, and nobody can contradict me. When I said the other time, even the Minister for Defense came out and confirmed that indeed there's a training taking place at the Embakasi barracks at that time. And they say that they were preparing themselves to provide security during the elections. It is not the responsibility of the military to provide security internally. That's the work of the police force. Under our constitution, The security force, the military is only supposed to protect us against external aggression. And they cannot be deployed without express approval by Parliament. Parliament has been closed, and there's been no permission given to President Uhuru Kenyatta to deploy the military.
Before I go to my next question, Honorable Odinga, I do understand that the lighting here tonight is quite bright. And this is actually Linus Kaikai. We should have explained our sitting positions. And to my left is Joe Ageo. And with a bit of makeup, we actually look alike. So thank you very much. I'll continue with my question. With regard to what some of your critics, Honorable Odinga, see as your persistent war on institutions. You fight institutions, that's what they say. You wanted the other IEBC out, they were removed. You have a new IEBC, you still have a problem with that IEBC. You've explained your position on what you're talking about with regard to the role of the military in the election. You are known to have spoken very strongly against the institutions like the provincial administration or former provincial administration. Are you a man on the war path against institutions? And given a chance, what would you and how would you relate with these same institutions if you became president?
Joe, I'm not fighting institutions.
This is Kaikai. This is Linus.
Sorry. I'm sorry. This is Linus. You say they look alike. So I'm justified in confusing identities.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Whenever you see me criticize an institution, I'm not doing what you call negative criticism. I'm doing what you call constructive criticism, with a view to trying to make those institutions change. You know, we have a new constitution. If we had not been fighting the institutions, we would never been having we would not be having a new constitution today, because everybody else wanted the status quo to remain. Remember the talk at that time that Kanu will rule for the next 100 years. The country was not cohesive enough for multipartyism and so on. So we all the times want to bring improvements. You have a new constitution. Now this new constitution needs to be implemented. Unfortunately, the responsibility of implementing this new constitution fell into the hands of those who opposed it. Remember the red cadres and the watermelons, and they're the ones who are in charge. So they are actually undermining the new constitution. They are undermining some of these institutions, like the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission should be an independent body that exists and works independently without interference from the executive. But if you see Mr. Matiang'i coming out and telling the political parties that, oh, no, only one person is going to be allowed at the polling station as an agent, people are not going to be allowed to vote and leave, so on. You ask yourself,
in all fairness, Mr. Odinga, your grievances against IEBC are older than Matiang'i's term as acting CS in charge of security.
Yes, the first time we actually approached the IEBC and we asked them to bring about certain changes which you know brought some challenges in the last elections. And the former IEBC, led by Mr. Isaac Hassan, refused to listen to us. Our petitions to them fell on deaf ears. We therefore had no other alternative but to call for the removal. You remember, we said we wanted a referendum, and they provided us with a template of how to collect signatures. We went around the country collecting signatures, millions of signatures. When we presented them, then we used a technicality to rubbish all that, and instead of allowing us, if we were short by a few hundreds, to fill the gap, they said the process was closed. In other words, they did not want a referendum to be held. So we knew that if we went on with this kind of electoral commission to the next elections, nothing was going to change. doing the same thing, the same way, hoping to get a different result is stupidity. That's why we said we needed that IBC to go so that we could have a new IBC in its place. What is happening right now is that there's nothing wrong with the current commission. What has happened is that they retained the same secretariat which was part of the IBC that has gone. And then there is still interference by the National Intelligence Service in the work of the IBC. That is the reason why.
Mr. Odinga, do you have proof of these things that you say?
Joe, Linus, sorry. I told you that I never talk in vain. When I speak, I'm speaking from the point of view of information, which is from an inside, because I have my sources inside. So what I'm talking about is just wild allegations. There are issues which can be substantiated, and indeed, we have written to the Electoral Commission, we have written to the Inspector General of Police, we have written also to the head of the military, drawing their attention to the information that is in our position.
Right. Let me come to the issue of defense and national security, which is one of our topics on leadership. And Honorable Odinga, you've stated several times that you want Kenyan troops out of Somalia. But you've never, with clarity, indicated how you intend to tackle the persistent problem of terrorism, especially Al-Shabaab activities inside Kenya, Lamu, and other coastal areas. What do you propose to do after pulling troops out if elected president?
Joe, I was at the National Security when we took a decision to send our troops into Somalia. But I had, as a Prime Minister then, to go to Parliament, move a motion seeking parliamentary authority for us to deploy our troops. We called it Operation Linda Inch, meaning that Operation Defend Our Country. They moved into Somalia. Then we got information from the military that just pushing the Shabaab in Somalia will not amount to much unless we liberated the port of Kismayu, which was their main source of supply. We did apply for international support. The US declined, the EU also declined. So we therefore decided to use our own military, the Air Force, the Navy, and the Land Army to liberate the port of Kismayu. That caused a relief to Ugandan troops which were marooned in Mogadishu. Thereafter, we should have retreated back to our borders. But what happened was our troops were then rehatted and made part of the AMISOM troops inside Somalia. In the meantime, the Al-Shabaab has continued to penetrate our territory and carry out attacks in Mandera, in Wajir, in Lamu, and so on and so forth. The AU had passed a resolution saying that neighboring countries should not send their troops into their neighbors' territory for fear of retaliatory attacks. We have now witnessed to these retaliatory attacks. We saw what happened in Westgate. We've seen what has been happening around. So what we said is that we need to withdraw our troops strategically from Somalia to our border and seal our border and provide strategic support to the AMISOM troops inside Somalia. And then at the same time increase our intelligence here, intelligence gathering,